Hello, everyone. Welcome to Salesforce Architecture Talk.
A podcast by two CTAs for everyone in the Salesforce ecosystem. And that includes architects, developers, admins, consultants, or anyone who either want to be a CTA or already is on the pathway to CTA, or for that matter, any Salesforce certification.
That's awesome. Very exciting, Satya. I think this is the best thing which we have done together. Let's get into the introduction first before we talk more about it. Why don't you start with it, Satya, first?
Well, thank you, Gaurav. I'm Satya. I work as a lead architect for Google here in the Bay Area, and I'm a Salesforce CTA.
Awesome. And I'm Gaurav Sood. I work at Ingenuity Partners in Sydney, Australia as Director of Engineering and Architecture. And I am also a Salesforce CTA. Cool. All right. So, Satya, I think let's get started. What are we doing today in our very own new podcast series?
Well, Gaurav, you kind of gave it away, but first of all, let me thank you for doing this with me. I know we spoke about doing something together when we joined Salesforce, and we've been talking about it for a long time, right? So I'm glad that we are here together. So what are we doing? Okay, so we are actually launching a podcast about Salesforce, everything Salesforce, including architecture, design, best practices, CTA prep for anybody who wants to learn Salesforce. And that means it could be someone who's new to the platform or already has experience onto the platform or just want to take their career to the next level. So we are going to launch this podcast in seasons. And the first season is, drumroll please, CTA. Yes, you heard it right. It's the CTA prep, the most difficult and most elite certification in the Salesforce ecosystem, where there are only 300 people in the world, almost 300 approximately. Well, take this. I'll give you a fun fact. There are more astronauts in this world than there are CTAs. Imagine that. Okay. And what we are doing, well, over the next few months, we are going to launch deep dive sessions. And I say sessions because there could be more than one for every topic that is required for you to master when you are on your CTA journey. Okay. So, Gaurav, do you think this makes sense?
Definitely, Satya. I think it makes perfect sense. I think it's an awesome opportunity for both of us to really share, first of all, about our CTA journey, the preparation techniques we used during our journey for the review board. I think it's a platform for us to really share the wealth of knowledge we collated during number of years. So and during our journey, see, we were very lucky. We had CTA coaches and CTA buddies who were able to help us through the journey, understand all those architectural concepts and share the knowledge. But this is something we have been looking to really find a platform where we can help all the future candidates and share all the knowledge, and which is this particular podcast. So I think this is awesome. I'm very, very, very excited. Before we deep dive into all the details about the podcast, why don't we talk a little bit more about what's our motivation to start this podcast? Let's start with you, Satya.
For sure. Well, look, I'm super pumped about this. This is long term in the making. And as you know, Gaurav, I've been, before getting my CTA, I've been working on the Salesforce ecosystem for a long, long time, right? Like I worked as a dev, as a team lead, as a consultant, a project manager, program architect, technical architect, delivery manager, you name any role in this ecosystem, and I might have done that role at some point in my journey on the Salesforce platform, right? But the funny thing is, I never thought of doing my CTA until I joined Salesforce, which was about in 2017 when we joined together, right? And it was only when I met all the CTAs, because the most number of CTAs are in Salesforce. So you meet them, you get motivated. And that was really the time when the idea that I could be a CTA started to crystallize in my mind, right? I had, and as you know, like Salesforce is not, getting a CTA is not a small task, right? Like it takes a village of people, coaches, friends, family, support from everybody to get you through across the line. And I've been lucky because I've met so many incredible people and have them coach me as well, right? Like you can meet somebody, but then convincing them to coach you is another story, right? So I had people like June, Olivier, Deepu, Osama, Dattu, Khalid, Francesco. Oh my God, there are so many to name, right? These are only a few people who are part of my journey, along with very good friends like yourself, Ahmad, Subbu, Guy, KP. Oh my God. So I can name so many people who are part of who have been part of my Salesforce journey. But look, this is a luxury you only get if you are an employee of Salesforce, because they have a very strong CTA program internally. But not everybody is an employee of Salesforce, but they do work in the Salesforce ecosystem. So what about them? What about people all around the world? There are so many, there is such a enormous amount of Salesforce talent back in India, which is where I come from. And I know so many people from all around the world who at least are curious to know what the CTA is, or want to know a little bit more. So I think that's my motivation. I think I have two really goals that I want to see come out of this particular podcast that we're doing together. One is more of a selfish reason. I really want to meet all the wonderful people around the world, be part of their journey, coach them, help them in their journey, right? So that's kind of like a reason one, and the reason two is actually give back to the community as well, right? Every CTA you meet has their own journey. And there's an army of people who have coached them, and you'll see this feeling of giving back in terms of coaching in the CTA community, and it's a very, very strong feeling, right? Recently, I also had the luxury or privilege really to attend Dreamforce. And you would be surprised that so many people came to me asking for CTA coaching, right? And it's hard. Like the coaching is also pretty hard, because coaches also gets involved and they have to spare time and so on and so forth, right? I get messages on LinkedIn now, every now and then, people asking me if I can coach them or be a judge, right? So uh, I think this is one of the way that we can provide value to the ecosystem. After all, we live in an information age. Everybody should have access to all the information out there, and this is one way for us to make that available to people in the ecosystem. Now, before I also want to highlight that this is our first podcast, right? So we are not going to get everything right. So my request to all the listeners out here is you should subscribe to our channel. We want to know who you are. Please provide constructive feedback on our content. If you like it, press the like button. If you don't like it, tell us what you don't like it, or if you want us to cover a different topic, we would be more than happy to cover it, right? So subscribe, like, comments. I'm going to be very annoying. I'm going to be repeating this all over the series, so please don't mind me doing that. Well, look, that's enough about me, Gaurav. Why don't you tell your story?
Wow, look at that. That's so inspirational story, Satya. I think anybody will get inspired by hearing yourself on this podcast. So that's why we are creating this podcast, right? So we want to inspire people. We want to help and share our knowledge, as we were saying. This is the platform where we can actually touch a lot of lives than doing one-on-one coaching or helping others one by one. So I think, as you were mentioning, it's a CTA journey for every architect is a little bit different, but still they have a lot of things which are common, and I share a lot of similar things which we you have just mentioned. And I think going back to the previous like 2016 time when I actually didn't know anything about Salesforce ecosystem, and I was privileged that I had an opportunity to join Salesforce in Salesforce Professional Services, where on the day one, and who did I meet on the day one in the onboarding call? And that was yourself, Satya. So that's when we actually met, two architects joining Salesforce Services,
It
two
was
different
meant to be.
locations. And then, yeah, meant to be together. So I think that was the trigger point when we actually wanted to, like, that was the journey we wanted to get started. So I think I knew about Salesforce CTA before joining Salesforce, but that was very high level, and I was coming from
Mm.
like Java background. I didn't have any defined pathway on how I'm gonna get into the technical leadership. But looking at the CTA pyramid, which is literally a PhD in Salesforce, I felt like, okay, this is the path which I would want to really follow, and I jumped on the journey straight away. After joining Salesforce, I think it took 2+ years into going into preparation, going from zero certification to really 18 certification, and then finally landing into CTA. So, as you were mentioning, it's not one person job. It's not something one person can really do it alone. It's a village of people who coaches,
Yep.
buddies who really can help and support. So I think to name a few, Francesco, Brett, Khalid, Tatu, Deepu, they all are awesome coaches. And you were mentioning it's very hard to really, first of all, convince someone to be a coach.
Yeah.
And because as a coach also, you really need to invest a lot of time. And then on top of it, we both were very lucky that we had number of CTA buddies like yourself, Subbu, Gaurav Bhatia, Ras, KP Ahmed, who were there to help and support and meet over the weekend, share our knowledge and present to each other, talk about the concept. So it's something very unique which happens through the journey, and you basically with the coaches and the whole study buddies, you really build up that relationship, and that something is not available to everyone. And that's why we wanted to really open up this particular channel and an opportunity to really create this podcast to share the knowledge. And because we have both gone through the similar path, it will be easy enough to create some relevant content for our audience and future CTAs to consume this particular content. So that was all the motivation that, okay, we would want to really get started together and then do something for the community. And I think during Salesforce, after getting CTA, we gained a lot of Salesforce knowledge, a lot of concepts we learned while on the CTA journey. And after getting CTA, I was able to share that knowledge with other candidates, helped other people to get to CTA, coached few people to reach the milestone. So, and I think this is something was huge, which we really wanted to do it together. So, and when earlier in the year you mentioned, okay, oh Gaurav, why don't we start a podcast on CTA? I was like, that's something is we don't need to really think about it. It makes perfect sense to do it. So I think it's an opportunity where we can talk about all domains which help you to really gain the relevant knowledge. I still remember Khalid used to tell us that, okay, CTA is a journey to become a better architect. And that's what we will do together. That we'll create more architects and better architects who are aware about all these particular concepts. They get to CTA or won't get to CTA, it's a different path. But eventually, we'll share awesome knowledge with the future candidates and create better architects through this journey. So I'm very excited, super pumped to really see what all awesome things we can do it, and then share all this knowledge with the future candidates. Cool. I think that's good, really stepping stone towards the next step. I think we both are super motivated. We have highly motivated. Now I think let's talk about, okay, what we're going to cover in this particular series to start with. So why don't we
Absolutely.
start?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'm super pumped. I don't think I've been ever I don't remember. Maybe when I was preparing for CTA, when I first thought of it, I was like super pumped at the time. And this is probably the second time I'm like, yes, man, let's do it. So what are we going to cover? But first things first, if you're listening to this, if you have ever thought about CTA, or if you're already on the journey, subscribe, like, comment. Thank you. What are we going to cover? So we are going to run this as seasons, right? The first season, we are calling it CTA Deep Dive, which means this is going to give you content to take you and apply in your pathway to CTA. We will cover what we call domains. So as everybody listening to this may or may not know, the CTA can be pretty much divided into these domains is what we call it, right? And you need to be an expert in each of those domains, and that's what you cover in your when you are actually solving the scenario, also when you present and you get questioned on each of these domains, right? So we will do 1 to 2 episodes, or maybe even more if you ask for it, on each of those domains, where we will cover everything about that domain that you need to pass the CTA exam, right? We'll give you tips, tricks, use cases, templates, how to prepare, how deep you should go in each of those domains, and how to prep for that domain in the Q&A, because that's probably the most hardest part of CTA, right? So without further ado, I think, Gaurav, let's dive a little bit in detail about what these domains are. Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, definitely. I think domains are the stepping stones to become better architect and become CTA. So before we do that, we'll actually we talk about, okay, in general, what CTA review board is, what sort of timelines you should work towards, what sort of content prep strategy you would want to have. Once you have the clear view of, okay, this is how your overall preparation style will look like, then definitely we'll talk about the application architecture is what we call it, which is more of platform app builder, knowing Salesforce basic concepts. Application architecture talks Sales Cloud and Service Cloud, licensing, how that these all different products work together. Then I think once we understand the very high level, we talk about the security concepts, which is the sharing architecture, talking on the platform. There are, as you know, Satya, there are like n number of ways with which you can actually work on security on the platform, depending upon the use case. Mm-hmm. So depending upon the use case, your solution can be optimal or suboptimal, right? So based on that, so we're going to talk about all the sharing concepts. And then there'll be, next step is to really learn about Apex development. So that'll be something with platform developer aligned certification content, which we're going to talk about. Then there'll be integration architecture, different patterns to connect with different third-party applications, the security around protecting those particular integrations, how to talk about the securing those particular integration, different techniques to use on the platform. And then there'll be one biggest hurdle of identity and access management, which not every architect would have touched in their project. So, which is something, a weak area for every architect, like yourself or me. Both have like struggled on this particular badge, this domain, and the area. And then this is something we will share a lot of content on that, and then we'll talk about, okay, how to do this particular identity pattern. So yeah, I think these are the key bits. I think I'll let you cover a little bit too.
Sure. Look, identity, I was very weak at it when I started preparing for it. Eventually, you go so deep into that topic that you become an expert, and then you are like expert for life, right? So that the identity is a very, very that kind of a topic, right? You really need to deep dive into it if you haven't worked on it, right? So yeah, so the rest of the topics really. We wouldn't be here if there is no talk of data. So data architecture is super critical. In CTA context, really data focuses on large data volumes and data migration, right? But we all know that data is so much more than that. It affects so many areas of the platform. I think that and security are probably the two domains that cut horizontally across various different domains as well. So it's very key. So we'll tell you where the overlap is as well when you talk about data. The communities, Experience Cloud. Now this is if you have not worked on communities, how do you engage customers, partners, how do you set up internal communities? The licensing model is very, very different than internal licensing. The security model, there are also nuances around that. So deeply understanding that is super critical, because I'll tell you something, that every CTA scenario will have a community use case into it, right? And then we have the dev lifecycle and governance. Now, this is a topic where I would actually divide that into two bits. The dev lifecycle bit is where you talk about CI/CD, your dev methodology, your testing strategies, branching strategies, and all. I think that is relatively simpler for a lot of people. The harder bit in this particular domain is the governance. How do you set up governance structures when you have a very, very complex implementation, right? It is clearly an underdog when it comes to CTA prep. A lot of candidates struggle in this. I definitely did. So it's a very important domain to focus on, and we will give you best practices in terms of how can you prepare for this particular domain. There is also a surprise, and I will let you talk about it, Gaurav. Tell the audience about the bonus.
That's awesome. I think, yeah, that's there is a bonus for our listeners, and the bonus is something which we will make it happen. As in, you will make sure you don't get bored by listening to only two of us. We'll make sure that you will get to hear from other CTAs in the ecosystem. There are many other CTAs who are definitely keen to help, and we will be inviting a few CTAs to talk about maybe in one particular area, maybe in marketing cloud, maybe in security, maybe in integration, where they can actually come and share their wealth of knowledge which they have gained through the journey, and then share the love basically. So definitely you will hear all that when you subscribe to our channel. So make sure you subscribe and wait for those particular key moments when we're gonna make it happen. Cool. What are we gonna do about next now?
Well, if you talk anything about Salesforce, you have to have a safe harbor, right? So look, we are two friends really trying to give as much information possible to our audiences who want to listen, But this is not a formal coaching of CTA review board, right? A formal coaching takes a lot. We are going to share best practices, tips, tricks about how to prep for CTA. We'll put the information out, but we won't be giving you the insider information about how the exam is run and everything. We'll give you format details and help you prepare for a domain, but it's up to you to then take that information, prepare. This is not an alternative for preparation. So please use this as just general guidance only. And then, let's have fun along in this journey, right? Let us know what you think. Do they like our content or don't? And then we'd definitely love to hear from everybody. So let's wrap it up. Gaurav, how does the audience, how can we share the audience, how they can reach us? What are some of the mechanisms?
Yeah, definitely. So as we both are pretty active on LinkedIn and Twitter, and we'll be definitely happy to connect and respond on LinkedIn. Additionally, we are also setting up a website called arctalk.co, link to which we're going to add it in the show notes, where you can actually reach out. We will let you share more knowledge. You can connect, and then you can drop a message, and then eventually we can basically get that particular feedback into our future episodes. Awesome.
Excellent. Okay. All right. I'm going to wrap it up. I think that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you for listening to us. Hope you enjoyed the chat. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment. We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.